What's up, people? Fucking Daniel in the morning. Right away, I cuss. Can't even hold myself in, not even for the beginning of the dang thing. So, anyways, I spent 8 hours on a shot cider, and it sucked. It was boring as heck. I'll get my new partner where I can actually do some work soon-ish. But, I listened to a lot of fucking, there I go again. Jeez Louise, can I not drop F-bombs? Anyways, I was listening to some geopolitical stuff. I was more listening to a lot of Asian perspectives, because you don't want to just hem yourself in to a one perspective of a thought. But I felt like a lot of the people didn't understand. I almost feel like they don't understand what's going on, and I understand because I don't have a clear picture of what's going on. I don't know what the hell they're doing over there. Anyways, I don't have a clear picture of what's going on in Asia, and the Asians probably don't have a very clear picture of what's going on here. And there were some ambassadors, but even they aren't given. They're here, but they hear shit, but they don't. They're not given the whole picture, or they're not. It's not important to them, right? So they're focused on things that are important for their country. They're focused on that, which might not necessarily be the important things that are happening for the United States. Sorry about that. That will eventually affect them. They've got a list of crap, I imagine, that they need to get done. They hear some stuff, but it's amazing how little the Asians talk about. How fast am I going? Fast enough. I don't want people to come up from behind me and rear end me. I'm sure that'll happen. Anyways, I'm sure that they but I don't hear it, right? I don't hear why it's important, and I heard a little bit, but not enough. And you hear a lot. You hear a lot of the Americans that are over there talking, and they're talking about. And a lot of the Asians too, and they're talking about how America needs to stay in the world order, decoupling from China, all this stuff about that. Of course, everything centered around China and America, the two largest economies in the world. And what surprises me is everybody expects China to keep growing and to eventually overtake the United States, and I just don't see it. I follow this guy, Lawai 86 or 87, I can't remember, in Serpenta or something like that. And they do like a China travel video. And I see a lot of what's going on with China. Like, they drive through some of these ghost cities, and I just don't see, if China keeps going the way they're going, the only thing I can see happening is China becomes isolationist. Because if they don't open their markets, there's going to be a hard stop on the U.S. part. And I don't mean open their markets I mean open their money to the world. And it's dangerous, because then you lose control of your money, and you can have shit happen. Even though the U.S. dollar is, and especially because the U.S. dollar is the currency of the world, we operate in a trade deficit. It's just the way it works. The people want the dollar. The dollar is the dependable currency. When I accidentally reset my I got it beeping at me, telling me I'm coming close to the line. So the dollar dollar is the currency of the world. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know that. And here's my very cheap understanding. And I'm in the Peter Zeihan camp when it comes to what's going on. And I feel like I can see it. Maybe a little bit better than some other people. And I don't understand why others don't see it. And I hear these Asians, specifically this who I was listening to today, people from Singapore and India, and they're talking about how it's in the U.S.'s best interest to keep the global community the way it is. It's not in our best interest to keep doing what we've been doing. Basically, and if you listen to Peter Zeihan, he'll tell you that the way we operate things is the same way we've operated things since 45, 46, when the Brentwoods. Basically, we bribed up an alliance. We allowed people access to our economy. And in exchange, we controlled their military. And not directly, but we controlled the strategy of their military. And the way that this worked is the reason we did this was so that we could hem in and eventually choke the Soviet Union to death. And it worked. The problem was that the people in charge couldn't see a possible outcome of U.S. versus Soviet that didn't end in mutual destruction. And nobody in the U.S. realized how broken the Soviet Union was, how completely destroyed they were. And everybody outside was like, the Soviet Union's better than us. And this is from our own military, our own CIA. They thought until the very end that the Soviets were toe-to-toe or ahead of us. And they had no clue that probably for the last 20 years, they'd been on a downward spiral. And China isn't that closed off, so we can kind of see some of the bad moves that China has made. And it's more than that. It's their demography is totally unsustainable. They're homogeneous. There's just Chinese. You can't immigrate to China. You're either Chinese or you're not Chinese. It's not like coming to the U.S. You swear in, you become a United States citizen, and you gain most. I say most because there's some things you don't have access to, like an immigrant can never become president of the United States. So there's that. Almost all of the benefits of being a born here citizen, you gain almost every single benefit. That doesn't happen in China. So their demography is their demography. It's gonna look like Japan's really quickly. And here's the problem. That's in the best case scenario, right? And I think they're like 1.2 or 1.4, and a sustainable demography requires 2.1. Even India is at like 1.7 or something like that, 1.6. And I believe the UN numbers are incorrect because India, they say, is 2.1. And for some reason, they think India is going to grow. And I think India is going to crash. The entire human population is pretty close to maxing out. I don't think Nigeria and places like that could, because I believe they're the fastest growing, and by the end of the century, all things stable, of course, Nigeria should be the most populous country in the world. And we know that nothing is stable in Africa. That's weird. So nothing's going to stay stable in Africa. So you could pretty much throw that in the bank. The Chinese population could dip even faster. I mean, depending on what happens in what goes on in the world. So let's say let's say the Americans pull out of the system, and this is what Peter thinks is going to happen. And you can see now what's going on. If you want to come to the U.S. and you want something from the U.S., you have to give us something that we want, right? So you're saying we'd like to sign a defense treaty or defense, so that, you know, like we have with Japan, like we have with Taiwan. So if China were to ever attack Taiwan, we are obligated to defend Taiwan. And that would be, I can't imagine that going good for China. That would not be a good deal for China. We'd see real fast what they're fucking made of. That's for sure. We'd see real fast what they're made of. So anyways, you have to bring something to us that we want. And a lot of people didn't realize when they were coming to talk to Trump about all these things that the status quo was gone. And this was before the G7 or the G20 meeting, and then you had your block, your 7 blocks, your main 7 countries, which is like U.S., UK, France, Germany, Italy, and my brain is farting. I don't know why I can't think of the other country's name. Well, anyways, whatever. You have the meeting, and everybody was unaware. The G7, I believe is what they call themselves, but whatever. Nobody was aware, so they thought, well, there's no way, right? And then they met Trump in Canada, and basically everything fell apart because he was like, go fuck yourselves. And they didn't realize that their personal meetings with him, they thought that they could wine and dine him, right? And it would be diplomacy as we've been doing it for forever. And he's basically told them no. He's like, what can you give us? Why do we want to continue being the guarantors of the world? And I understand that in a lot of places the world sucks. It sucks in Syria. It sucks in a lot of the Middle East. It sucks a lot of places in Africa. There's bad places in Asia. There's just terrible places around the world. You just frankly, you don't want to live there. And when I'm on YouTube making comments like, the world has never been a more peaceful place, and people from like Turkey and people from China, the 50 Cent Army, and people from these countries that don't like America, or people from our own country who don't like America, are like, you're an idiot. Oh, what about this place? What about that place? I'm like, why don't you look at the fucking wars that happened before the end of World War II? Just look at it. You had empire spanning wars in the early 20th century, 19th century, 18th century, 17th century, and the time that America had our Civil War, the War of 1812, and the Spanish-American War. there were something like, we had 3 or 4 wars. In that time period, I think Europe had like 40 something wars. They threw up a list like of wars. You'll never know the names of those wars, most of them. And they just kept on getting worse and worse. And you got to think, World War I was started when a no-name piece of shit got shot. Wasn't even important. Franz Ferdinand, right? If I can remember correctly, got shot and killed, and he wasn't even important. And what a lot of these people, what bothers me is they try to talk about how we're codependent, interdependent, and everybody's so closely aligned and dependent on each other that this will help prevent military conflict. And it just blows my mind. Who hurts you the worst in your life? Those close to you. The closer a group is, the more likely there's going to be, the bigger a close group is, the more likely there's going to be that one, that one asshole who breaks the whole group up. It happens. Anybody's had a group of friends, like 10, 20 friends, and everybody's a friend, and then there's a couple assholes, and then 15 years later you're like, you haven't seen a single one of them in like a decade. So the closer you are, the more independent you are, the more likely it is you're going to go to war. Because if you're not dependent and you're not linked closely, this GMC is on my fucking ass. Use your goddamn sensor. I know you got it on your GMC. I can see it in your windshield. Thank you very much. Jesus Christ, these people acting like they don't got modern vehicles. So anyways, the closer, the more dependent a country is on each other, the more likely you're gonna see them go to war. And this was a big problem for the empires of Europe, and they were going to war all the frickin' time. And how did they go to war? Not with their own people, not unless the war got huge. They were going to war with their territories, the people of their territories. That's how they fought their wars. Kind of like how the U.S. and Russia fought proxy wars, through other countries, because the U.S. and Russia couldn't afford to fight. Because you start fighting, oh, you blew up my carrier, I hate you, I'm going to blow up 3 of your carriers. Oh my God, you destroyed half my Navy, I don't have any more carriers left. That would have been Russia. We're going to bomb you with nukes. And they're like, oh yeah, well I'm going to launch nukes at you. And there's no more Russia, and there's no more US. And then the world goes into a mini ice age for fucking 450 years. Probably wouldn't be a bad deal for what's going on right about now. But anyways, if you're not interdependent, like we're not going to go to war with a country we have nothing to do with, right? They have no interests that align with us. We have no interests that align with them. Why go to war? What reason is there to have conflict with that nation? There's no reason for us to have a conflict with that nation because we have no competing interests, right? But with China and the U.S., there's a lot of competition, right? We're the 2 biggest economies in the world. One, because there's 1.4 billion people in their country, and the other because, we're the richest nation in the world. And that has a lot to do with World War II as well. And we stuck our fingers in. There's no reason for us to be in Syria. There's no reason for us to be in the Middle East at all. We're energy independent. But what surprises me about these Asian people is they think that it would be in our interest United States interest, making a turn, so I pulled my phone out. It would be in the United States interest to stay in the world order. We don't use it. Just like the French don't use the European Union. That's another story. The Americans don't use the world order. We're guarantors for the entire world. And frankly, nobody wants us to be. Nobody in the States. There's some globalists. But most people don't want our military out there being guarantors for the rest of the world. They don't think it's our job. And China said something about how much money we spend on defense. China, if we stop spending that much money on defense, who's going to protect your ships? How are you getting your oil back from the Middle East? Right? That cat is so pretty. It's a pure white cat. Anyways, they were just talking shit. China was. Oh, what the fuck. Alright, get out of the way, cat. I'm driving in. Where the hell are you? Oh my god, dude. These cats just run right in front of the car. They're like, oh, it's time to eat. It's time to eat. Alright, I'm back home. So anyways, sort of to finish up, these Asian people, they thought that it's in our best interest to keep doing this world order crap, to keep our economy involved. Our economy was never involved. Something like it's gotten lower. So even in 2012, when we were more involved, we've become less involved. And if you take out the trade partners, I believe China is like 4% of our GDP. We can lose that. It hurt. A lot of countries, but if we pulled out and be like, you know what, fuck you, and told our companies, you know, hey, you want to fucking do business, you got to do it in Southeast Asia. We've got Vietnam, we've got Malaysia, we've got the Philippines, South Korea, Japan. Go do that. And here's another thing that I don't think people have thought about. Everybody's talking about automation. When everything's automated, it don't fucking matter what country it's in. And then the key isn't that. The key is, how much does it cost? How much does energy cost? And I'm telling you right now, we got so much fucking energy here, and not dirty energy like coal. We got a ton of natural gas. And if we replace everything burning that's coal with natural gas, we cut our emissions by 32%, I think is what the number was. Don't quote me on that. And we're only 15% of the emissions. Amazingly, we're only 15% of the emissions of the world. And we're not fucking a giant burning we're not China, that's for sure. They've probably got cities that are more than 15%. Oh my god, dude. And I heard the dumbest shit, that China doesn't have to steal our technologies. They actually said they had the best battery technology. China just stole the IP from Tesla, their batteries, so that they can make battery car, because their fucking cars suck. So it's horrible. Anyways, that fucking pissed me off. But anyways, it's in our interest for the whole world to go up in smoke. Gone. Goodbye. Because we don't need oil. And most of our trade is already done. Japan, the UK, USMCA is just needs to go through the Senate. That's most of our trade is done. And if China doesn't want to play ball, fuck China. Fuck China. We'll replace all that stuff. Our companies can go to Malaysia, Taiwan. They can. A lot of them are in Taiwan, and with the cheap energy, a lot of the heavy industry, come back home. Come back home, because energy is going to be real cheap in the U.S. for a significant amount of time. I mean, hell, we're burning fucking methane gas. Are you fucking kidding me? Build the infrastructure. Build the infrastructure. And government, I hate it, but the government might have to step in and build the infrastructure to these fucking shale companies, because they're not doing it fast enough, and we need to get that shit up, and we need that gas in our system and being used by us instead of being burned off. And it's gonna get burned off. It should be burned off in a plant to provide electricity. All right, anyways, peace out, people. 25 freaking minutes, Jesus Christ. I gotta feed these cats and these dogs. Peace out.